There we go. Just had to give it a second. Good afternoon, everyone. If I could ask everyone to take your seats, we will get rolling here. Thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Holly Ward-Lamb. I'm the current director of the library, and I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon to basically celebrate the archives. So, why are we celebrating the archives? The archives play a unique role, and for me, the importance of the archives is all about connection and discovery. The archives connect us to our past. They connect us to the people that came before us. They connect us to our history and the history of our town. And for those of you that are nerds like me, you all watch Finding Your Roots, hoping one day they will do that for you personally. We can't offer that service here, but we can potentially connect you to some things that will help you along that path. So, oh, and the other thing that I find fascinating about the archives is house histories. My house is not old enough, but for those of you that have an older home, it's another way to understand your connection with the past. So let's start talking about how this all came about. Go back in time with me to 1975, the eve of the American bicentennial, and let's talk about how Howell was choosing to celebrate. I'm now going to introduce you to Amy Lamoureux, who is our lean Lamoureux's daughter, and she's going to tell you about the role that her mom played.
Thank you. Thank you. I cannot tell you how happy I am to be here right now. This whole moment has been a bit of a labor of love for me. It began with the story that wouldn't let go of me. So there's many of my brothers and sisters, there's 7 of us that are descendants of Arlene Lamoureux, whose idea was the Howell history book. And some great grandkids are also here. So here we go. So I am Arlene Lamoureux. I am Amy Lamoureux. Done that 5 times practicing this speech. Daughter of Arlene Lamoureux, who is the Howell Bicentennial Secretary and whose idea was the Howell History Book. I would like to share with you today of how it came to be that I am here talking to you today about the archives. I will tell you what I have learned about how my mom pulled off this amazing endeavor to get the whole town to write a history book. I will tell you how I came to be volunteering in the Howell archives. It starts with why I even went there. My part of the story begins with an inexplicable dream to walk in my ancestors' footsteps in France. Thanks to the research by my brother Tim, he discovered the place where our family came from over 300 years ago, and off to France I went to realize my dream. Because it had been so difficult to find this information, I decided that I would write a book about this adventure to help others with the same quest. About 10 years ago, after I wrote my book and when it came time for publicizing it, I went to the Howell archives to search for some material about my mom writing the Howell history book because I knew that the proceeds from the sale of this book was used for the establishment of the archives. I was thinking there must be something in there that would go with my publicity thoughts, like daughter, like mother, like daughter writes a book or something like that. I contacted the archives in advance with the request for the material I was looking for. This is how I first met Joyce Fisher, which I quickly learned was the force of nature behind the archives. She said she didn't have much regarding my mom writing the book, but she did have the tape recordings that my dad had donated to the archives. These recordings were of my mom on WHMI promoting the book. I asked Joyce if she knew that my mom, that the Howell history book was the brainchild of my mom, and that she was the driving force behind its publication, and that the archives were a byproduct of these efforts. She said she didn't know that. I thought, to myself, I think people need to know that story, and I've got to write it. That thought never left my head. Joyce went on to explain the workings of the archives to me, all volunteer run, and most of them were getting up there in age, so it was getting difficult. I made a mental note that when I finished the publicity for the book, I would come back to the archives to volunteer in honor of my mom and in honor of whoever archived the information about my family in France so I could realize my dream. A few months later, there I was, volunteering in the archives, given the job of clipping out obituaries from various local publications. Not exciting work, but necessary if you want to help that cause. There were many cool things for me about being in the archives, like I got to work next to Mr. Dwayne Zemper. We remembered each other from the Howell Bicentennial History Book days. I would catch Mr. Zemper on occasion staring at me, and he would then apologize, saying, "I'm sorry, but I can't get over how much you look just like your mom." I told him, "No worries. I have heard that same thing my entire life." And it truly warmed my heart. Besides reconnecting with Mr. Zemper, I also got to know Lois Winiger and Maury Coles. They were a font of local historical information and as such were very valuable to the archives. A common occurrence at the archives was receiving boxes full of pictures and memorabilia from people who were cleaning out a relative's home. One day, Mr. Coles and I were working through a box. I was reviewing the photos, and Maury was going through the memorabilia when a lady from California came in looking for information on her ancestor, who she believed had owned a store in Howell, maybe 1920, 1930. She maybe knew the name of a couple ancestors, but other than that, she really didn't know much at all. Based on that information, I watched Mr. Coles pull a brochure and other memorabilia right out of that same box and said, "Look, this is what you're looking for. This is from your family." It was like magic. But Maury was a longtime Howellite, and he knew the names of the family, so he was able to connect those dots. Witnessing the joy on that lady's face to be able to hold something in her hand that she had been longing to connect with was priceless. I knew this wasn't magic, but what a coincidence. People came from all over the country looking for archival information. I watched people searching the cemetery information to find out where their ancestors were buried so they could pay their respects. I saw people searching through birth records. The archive was a continual stream of people looking for all kinds of answers and connections. Many, many times it was very emotional and heartfelt. I understood why these people were compelled to visit the archives. After all, I had traveled all the way to France for a connection to my past. While I was volunteering there, I couldn't help but think, what a marvelous thing this bicentennial history book did, providing the catalyst for this room for all to use. With the anniversary of 50 years, that's Kathleen Murray, by the way, I have to point her out. I have a personal connection with her too. I'll get you next year on that one too. With the anniversary of 50 years of the history book's publication looming, I decided the time to write this story was now. I went to Kathleen Murray here at the library and told her what I knew. That the history book was my mom's brainchild, that she pitched the idea to her gas station guy, Mike Hagman, who said he liked the idea. She said she'd do it if he would help her. He agreed, except for the fact that the book was widely successful and the archives came out of it. I didn't really know how they pulled it off. I mean, she'd only been here a couple years. I knew I needed access to the archives to find answers, and the library graciously allowed me full access to their resources for my story. Thank you very much. I dug into research. Here's what I found out how my mom pulled this off. May of 1975, the Howell Bicentennial History Book had only 4 months to collect material. My mom went on a publicity spree on the radio, through the newspaper, even publicizing our home phone number, anything, anywhere, so she could promote this book. Her premise of getting the people of the town to write their own history in their own words sort of ensured the book could be written in time and it would stand a better chance of selling. Her thinking was, who wouldn't want to buy a book that they or a family member could possibly be mentioned in or even be a writer for? She told people that by contributing to this book, they would be giving a gift to the people of Howell, their families, and to generations to come. During her promotional tour, I heard my mom saying these words over and over to encourage submissions to the book. Okay, now I'm going to channel your voice. You don't have to be an author. Just say it in your own words. If you have trouble getting started, just start out writing. I remember when. And with those suggestions, she planted the seeds. With this fantastic vision as her guide, she told the residents of Howell that all their stories and histories held value. I heard her on the phone, which never stopped ringing during that period, coaching people on how to get started writing or offering a volunteer to come out and help them with their story. Her unique gift was her ability to make a special connection with each and every one of the people she talked to, which was easy for her because she believed passionately about this project. While researching this story, I had the good fortune of talking to Dennis Maury, who was a bicentennial treasurer and the only living member of the committee. He said my mom was like the engineer of the history book locomotive, and we all got on board for the ride. So, as you can see, all these stories are intertwined. If I hadn't gone into the archives that day to look for promotional stuff for the book I wrote, I wouldn't have seen that my mom's story wasn't being told. Also, I wouldn't have found the 4 hours of recording of my mom on WHMI, which gave me the most insight into how she pulled this off. By personally working in the archives, this showed me what a valuable legacy her efforts left for all of us. If she wouldn't have gotten the people of Howell to write this book, then we might not be here today, sharing stories of the beautiful connections made in the archives. It took me 50 years to realize and appreciate what an incredible feat she pulled off. How lucky I was to have this fabulous and spirited woman for my mom. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I happen to know there's some siblings of Amy's in the audience. Did she get the voice right? Yeah, awesome, awesome. So now we know about how the book started, the bicentennial book. I'm now going to introduce Diane McKee, who is the business office administrator here. And Diane's going to tell the story, how it went from a committee to the actual archives being here at the library.
Okay. I've been working here. I'm glad you're all sitting down. Since 1986. And I knew Mrs. Lamoureux as a patron. And in 1975, I was in high school in Brighton, which meant I knew nothing about the bicentennial history book, and you couldn't have paid me to listen to WHMI. So I didn't know anything about it till I got here. And one of the things that I learned, because the archives was physically housed inside the library then, approximately where the Friends have their book sale right now. One of the things I learned was after the book was done, and then a photographic supplement was done, and then a couple of sniffy older ladies than me said, and an index was made. All these ephemera and stories were housed somewhere. And Barb Ilnick, who had worked here for a very long time, told me that most of the wives said, we're not having that stuff in my house. Don't you put that stuff in my garage. City Hall was located where the Western store is, up above and below. They didn't have a place to store any of the ephemera, and they made some room in the library for it. They got some archival boxes and sorted some stuff and put some stuff together. And one of the other things that happened, I was told by Barb Ilnick and a couple of other ladies, was that the men decided they were in charge of it. And it became their project, their thing that they did, and they wished to continue to collect more history. Zemp had all the photos from the business he had bought when he moved to Howell, and they went back, gosh, I can't remember how far, wait till the beginning of photographs possibly, although no photographs of the alleged elephant buried under Grand River. No photographs of that. And when in 1989, the library became a district library. We were no longer part of the city. What would happen to all the archives? The men on the committee and the people involved said, well, you got to remember their age, okay? We don't wish to bother ourselves with any of that paperwork and things. So we will become a committee of the library. Thus, we can retain our autonomy, and you gals can manage the paperwork and the money and stuff. So that's exactly what happened. They were a committee of the library. They had their own bylaws. A fair amount of the women were involved, except for Barb Ilnick. I wouldn't have known that Arlene Lamoureux, a regular patron, had been heavily involved in doing the book. Fortunately, women stick together and keep those tales going. And it was a really cool thing because I actually read it once I started working here. And okay, in 1986, we weren't always busy. So I could be at the one circulation/reference desk and slowly read through the book, which was fascinating. Really enjoyed it. Although it was a little bit unorganized because it was just people telling their stories. The archives, when we had this building done, has their own climate-controlled room, their own space. Joyce Fisher, truly a force of nature, got all sorts of things donated. Like some doctor's office was getting rid of their files, the ones that you go like this were. That made it so much easier to store more things. It's superb back there. The stuff back there is really, really good. And slowly but surely, Jeremy Eden is getting stuff onto the digital archive. So people don't have to come from California if they aren't able to. They can see stuff they need from here. Trying to think if I've left anything out. I don't think so. They gave me 10 minutes though, so. I think that probably sums everything up fairly well.
Well, what I'm going to do right now is instead of moving on to my next cue card, are there any questions about the Bicentennial Committee, the Bicentennial book, the early days of the archives that I don't have the answers for, but these two ladies might? Sorry.
I'm one of the daughters, my mom, but anyway, they did this huge thing without computers. Everything was, handwritten and then typed by all these, and all the people that she brought together to head the different areas, the farming or the working or what. It was amazing. How do you do that without computers? You guys can't tell us probably.
Okay, so wait. There you go.
Was the committee under any organization, or was it just freestanding?
The Bicentennial Committee was sort of under the aegis of the city. That was one of the places where, like, if you were going to make a donation, that was one of the places. The other thing that happened was the editor of the newspaper, Yanig, was on this committee because I believe your mom roped him in. And they used the Livingston County Press, because it was just the press, not the Argus then, to do the printing. And they had the ability to put the book physically together.
I was a mere babe during the bicentennial. Didn't the city get some grants for the bicentennial? There was some money.
There was a national movement to get the country going on this bandwagon of 2,000 or 200 years of being and then they sent money down to the state, and the state also put out information like ideas on how you can celebrate. I even read all those publications, like how to get people to write a book, how to do this, how to do that. And then they suggested if you're going to do it in your city, you should tie with the local government, like you mentioned. And so these other things to get grants and to get money to make it effective. Yeah, you got to have somebody in charge.
And in the minutes of the city, I contacted the city not that long ago to verify this. They found some, oh gosh, she sent 74 pages of minutes. I didn't read them all. And when the Bicentennial Committee, when it left the city's aegis, which really they were just simply a fiduciary. They were just kind of being a bank account for the archives, the Bicentennial book, which had to go back to a second printing because it was so popular. And they had added even more photos at that time. We have copies of all these books, to tell you. And copies of these books, both the first one and the second one, are at the State Library. So, yep. Yes, you
Or
certainly may.
maybe
Say
a
about-
couple. If we, the money that this book, thank you, generated from the first printing and the second printing, and the pictorial, the third one as well. They knew because they were a nonprofit, the Bicentennial Committee, that it had to come back to the people. So obviously for them, they felt, because they were all historical buffs, that it should be for an archive, but they also did other things with the money besides throwing a huge party for the town in for 4th of July that year. But then there's also the time capsule buried out here in front of the library because everything starts at the library, you know. And $1,000 they gave to the city of Howell to put in an interest-bearing interest-bearing account for 2076 for the 300 celebration. So your kids hopefully will benefit. These are my boys.
So it really was a grassroots that started all of this.
So this book, is it pretty much the city of Howell, or does it cover the rest of the town?
So I think they did try to isolate mostly in just Howell, but you know, we're so close and connected here that, you know, there is obviously some county overlap as well.
Any other questions? All right, I get to have control of the mic. Thank you. So volunteers truly do power the archives. And not been in here as long as I am, but I've been around for a while. And when I think of volunteers, there are some names that rise up for me. This is no means all of them. Dwayne Zemper was mentioned already. He's a big one. Milt Charbonneau, Bob Watson. Those are like 3 names I think of right at the beginning. And then, of course, George and Lois Winiger and Joyce Fisher. And as Amy mentioned, Joyce was the powerhouse. Joyce was the powerhouse, especially near sort of the end of her time, of her reign. We're just going to call it a reign because it was a reign. Joyce was that much of a force with an amazing heart and an amazing love of the archives, and Howell, where she was born and raised, in its history. So fast forwarding, everybody remembers 2020 COVID, the archives closed, library shut, the world shut down for a while. And then in May of 2021, Joyce passed. So we did lose our heartbeat. So what have we been doing for the last 4 years, Holly? Is probably what you're wondering. There has been work going on. The model shifted a little. We didn't have hours. We were pulling information for people. There has been a huge digitization process underway. In fact, if you're wondering what is in this Bicentennial book, you can actually find it on our digital archives. And Jessica's going to talk about that in a minute. We did some work in the room itself. It got a little cleanup and a facelift, and we'll take you on tours later. And they got a really cool scanner. But, you know, I have technology envy every now and then, not that I have use for one. And one of the biggest changes in my mind is that the archives was a committee of the board. We dissolved that committee and we've pulled the archives back in under sort of the umbrella of the library. And we renamed it. We've renamed it the Howell Carnegie Library Archives. So everyone knows where to find it, just in case they didn't. Right now, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica Burns, who's going to kind of tell you what is happening in the moment in the archives.
Hey, y'all, thanks. All right, so like Holly mentioned, we've been working pretty hard in the digital archives. We've been working to fill gaps in our newspapers. We do have the bicentennial book in a digitized version accessible through the archives. I also have the great pleasure of being one of the people who helps maintain those community connections through this digitization project, working on the index, making stuff more findable. All of the stuff that we have in our digital archive, there are things like township abstracts, which are collections of legal documents that can help you track the history of ownership of a house. And that's for all of well, not all, but much of Livingston County. We also have plat maps. So if you're trying to see how things were divided way back in the day, you can access those as well through the digital archives. We've got the Howell Melon Cookbook from 1979. Right. We've got tons and tons of photo of people, places, and things. Some of them we even know exactly who and what they are, which leads me to the next thing that I get to talk about is how volunteers help us identify those and digitize those. So we have opportunities on each of our digital item listings where if you know something about one of those subjects, you can let us know what you know so that we can add to the information we have about those things. Yeah. We also, in our digital archives, have house histories. We don't have an exhaustive house history for every house that is here in Howell. So if you make one of a house history of your own house using the materials we've got, please share it with us so that we can share it with the community generations to come. We would love that. We've also got a new system for accessing the archives, which Holly alluded to. They are now going to be open by appointment, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can book at least 7 days in advance so I can make sure there's someone there to meet you and help you. And then up to 30 days in advance because life changes a little bit. Seemed like going farther than that didn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time since we've got cake to get to, but so yeah, if you want to volunteer with us, I've got information on these handouts that can get you a link to the digital archives, a link to the volunteer form, and then a link to the appointment page that we have set up. That Jeremy did a whole lot of that. I mostly get to stand up here and talk about it. So anything else? Any questions y'all have for me? Okay, I'll get out of the way.
So one of our upcoming projects is we're going to create a volunteer recognition wall to honor and recognize those who made significant contributions to the archives over the years. And that will live in the archives. And obviously the first plaque on that will be the members of the Bicentennial Committee that led all of this to fruition. So I was told to share my favorite thing about the archives. Well, there's many, and most of those are the volunteers. And I need to recognize, although he will kill me later, Jeremy Eden, who's our IT administrator. Joyce was the powerhouse. Jeremy has become the heartbeat of the archives. So sorry, Jeremy, I'm going to make you stand up. Stand up. Yeah, the next time my computer doesn't work, he's going to be told you not to do that, Holly. I'd also like to acknowledge the other current volunteers that we have. Liz Van Sickle, she's been with us for years and years and years. Some of our newer ones, Bert Belding. If you are in the library at all, you've probably seen Bert. You probably think he works here because he's usually running around working on the digital archives. He's awesome. Dan and Jan Houston, Ann Anderson, and Sharon Marvel. The other thing I love about the archives, and I'm going to warn you right now, it is a rabbit hole that you can fall into and worry about ever climbing out again. Spend some time on that digital archives. If you haven't seen the video that was put together about the sanatorium, take 18 minutes and watch it. It's real people doing real things that are now our history. And it does make me wonder how we will be remembered 50 to 70 years from now. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Please have cake There's a party, there's got to be cake. Oh boy, I'm getting the finger.
In May, I think it's the 14th, I could be wrong. There is going to be a program we're having here to teach you how to research your house. And I think it's going to be a great program if you are interested in that. I think it's the 14th, but check our website. I think it's going to be a great program. So there you go.
So in other words, in May, we expect you all to show up, all to learn how to write your house history, then get it to Jeremy so we can put it on the digital archives for generations to come, even if your house isn't that old. So once again, cake, beverages, thank you to everyone who makes the archives what it is today. And if you want to take a quick look, we will kind of cycle people through. The space isn't that large, so we're going to have to do small groups, but thank you, everybody.